Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivarasari Yasodanandana Bhaja Jana Ranjana Yasodanandana Bhaja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Chira Ponachari Yamuna Chira Ponachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parvajakacharya, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Is it verse 3? We're reading today from Śrimad Bhāgavatam Puran, 4th canto, Daksha curses Lord Shiva, chapter 2, verse 3. Vidura Vacha. Etad kakya hime brahman Etadakya hame brahman Janma tusva surasya cha Janma tuya sva surasya cha Vedvesastu yata pranam Vedastu yata pramans Tatyajastus yajan sati Itadyakta hime brahman Janmatisvaru sarasya Videyastu tata pramans Ajastu satasati Itadakya hime brahman Janmatu svasarasya cha Viveyastu yataha pramans Tadyajastu jajayan sati Etadakya hame brahman
Etadakya hime brahman Jamatu svashurasya cha Viveshastu yata pranam Tatyaje dustyajan sati
Etad akya
Itadakyakya he Brahman Janma tu svasya rasya cha Vidvedastu prayat praman Tatyajatus jayansati I'm just going to go straight into the translation because there's another verse after this also. Translation. My dear Maitreya, to part with one's life is very difficult. Would you kindly explain to me how such a son-in-law and father-in-law could quarrel so bitterly that the great goddess Sati could give up her life? My dear Maitreya, to part with one's life is very difficult. Would you kindly explain to me how such a son-in-law and father-in-law could quarrel so bitterly that the great goddess Sati could give up her life? Then 4:2-4, Maitreya Vacha, Para Vishvasrijam Satre, Samne Tapa Ramarsaya, Tatamara Ganaha Sarve, Shano Gamu Nayo Gyan Yaha. And this says, the sage Maitreya said, in a former time, the leaders of the universal creation performed a great sacrifice in which all the great sages, philosophers, demigods, and fire gods assembled with their followers. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Upon being asked by Vidura, the sage Maitreya began to explain the cause of the misunderstanding between Lord Shiva and Daksha, because of which the goddess Sati gave up her body. Thus begins the history of a great sacrifice performed by the leaders of the universal creation, namely Marichi, Daksha, and Vasishtha. These great personalities arranged for a great sacrifice for which demigods like Indra and the fire gods assembled with their followers. Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva were also present. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. For some time in this Bhagavat Puran, Vidura has been asking questions to Maitreya for the purpose of enlightenment. A great many questions have been asked, a great many topics have been covered, including the teachings of Kapila, the Leela of Lord Nrsimhadev, and so many other things. Now, Vidura, in his astonishment, he is asking, since life is so precious, how is it? What is the circumstances? Why is Sati decided to give up her life. To understand this, context is critical. To get a broader perspective, I'm going to look into who, what, where, and why. Shiva and his wife Sati are not ordinary entities. They're in a special category of living entity. It's said that Krishna has 100% of his attributes. If we describe him as having 100%, he plays a flute, he lives in Vrindavan, he plays with the cowherd boys and so on. Then Narayan, in the Vaikuntha planets, he has 95% of these qualities. And compared to Krishna's attribute, Shiva has 84%, while the ordinary jiva, they have much less. So, Sati, which is the subject of today's discussion, has numerous expansions and numerous names because she is not a living entity, she's in an ordinary jiva, she's in the category of Shiva, Mahesh. He's eternal, he has his own spiritual planet, he's in the spiritual world, not in the material world. The Brahma Samhita, verse number 8, describes that Shambho, a name for Shiva, is a halo, is a reflection, a dim reflection of Narayan. And that Maya Devi, she is an expansion of Lakshmi. So Maya Devi is Sati, is Durga, is Shiva, is Parvati, is Uma. She has so many different names according to different functions and different pastimes and different attributes that she has. The Brahma Samhita, verse 43, describes that the Mahesh Dham is eternal, that there's Maya Dham, material world, and going into the spiritual world, there's Mahesh Dham, the Vaikunthas, and then Krishna Loka. Brahma Samhita 44 describes that Maya is a shadow of the Chit potency and is worshipped in the material world as Durga. Chit is pure spiritual consciousness. It's described in that verse that Durga creates and preserves within this material world at Krishna's will. Śrimad Bhāgavatam 2:9-93, in which Krishna is speaking to Brahma, he said, I am the only object worthy of accomplishment. Everything else is Maya. But Maya does not exist independently. She is just a reflection of Krishna's potency in the material world, designed to perform specific functions. Jiva Goswami, in the Bhagavad Sandarbha, Anucheda 17th verse, he explains that he wants to explain the Swarup Shakti, the attributes of Bhagavan. But he said before he does this, he wants to examine the external Shakti. Jiva Goswami quotes the Vishnu Puran 1:19, verses 76 and 77, in which it is said to Vishnu, O Supreme Vishnu, I worship the all-powerful goddess Durga. Jiva Goswami explains that Durga has many forms. He quotes the Asvatarva Upanishad, chapter 6, verse 8. Parasya Shaktir Vividam Surya Yate. That everything emanates from Bhagwan's energies. And Maya is one of his energies, and Durga has many forms, many names, like Kali, Uma, Parvati, etc., etc. Jiva Goswami then refers to the Chatur Shloka Bhāgavatam, which, as we know, is Canto 2, Chapter 9, verses 33 to 36. In the second of these verses, verse 34, Jiva Goswami says the key feature, Riter Tam Yat Prati Yatra, in which Krishna is describing to Brahma, if not related to me, a thing has no value. So Jiva Goswami focuses on this thing of no value, which is Maya. And he explains that where you have Krishna, where you have consciousness of Krishna, although Maya is understood, it has no value. It's just simply an energy of Krishna, and Krishna is the focus. Whereas, if a person has no understanding, no focus on Krishna, if he's absorbed in Maya, then Krishna consciousness is not present. Still in that 34, Jiva Goswami goes on to say, the Maya reflection, Maya is but a reflection. So, he's concluding Maya is outside Bhagavan. It's not independently manifest. She's not independent. So here we have a flaw in Advaita philosophy. Shankaracharya, he advocates that there is only Brahman. Brahma Satyam Jagat Mita. That Brahman is truth and all else is false. But then we have the difficulty of how to explain that the jiva is covered by Maya. You walk out on the street, you see an ordinary person, they have so many concepts of life, but it's not spiritually based. They're not understanding that they're pure Brahman. They're enveloped by Maya. So where does this Maya come from, and how is this Maya so powerful that she can cover the pure Brahman consciousness? Because according to their understanding, there is only Brahman and nothing else. So where does Maya come from, and why is Maya so powerful? So this is a flaw in understanding the concepts of Shankaracharya. Whereas the Vaishnava Acharya, as it explained here, they're saying that Maya is real, Durga is real, she has a specific function within the material world. And the functions of Maya is that she puts the jiva in ignorance. Not actually puts them in ignorance, because the jiva, by his consciousness, by his focus, by his activities, he becomes in Maya, he becomes covered. So Maya Devi, she keeps the jiva covered, and she gets the jiva further and further entangled in his karmic pursuits. There is a volume in Sanskrit to which people refer, and Srila Prabhupada, in his books, in the annexes, he refers that one of his source materials is the Amar Kos. Amar means immortal, Kosa is a collection. It's a lexicon of terms. The first division is called the Swarga, Hikanda, and this lists Sati as Kalyani, as Gauri, Ishvari, Durga, Kali, Ambika. She has so many different names. In the Devi Bhagavata, it's described that within the material world, Durga has 37 different functions. 7 different functions, attributes are mentioned. For example, as Bhumi Devi, she is the soil, she puts nutrients in the soil, she gives the vegetables the opportunity to grow so that people can be sustained, so that they can live, so they can thrive. She also produces precious gems within the soil. As Svaha Devi, we say Svaha when we put oblations in the fire. This is recognizing Svaha Devi, Durga, and her providing the different ingredients in which we can do our different devotional functions. Nidra Devi is sleep. If we miss a little sleep, if we're busy in our service, it's difficult to function fully and correctly the next day. Extended lack of sleep makes a person hallucinate. They cannot function. So sleep is very necessary for our journey in this material world so we can function. This ability to sleep is given by Maya in her function as Nidra Devi. She comes as Ratri, Sandhya, Divasa, which is the day, the Sandhya. We have Sandhya Arti at dusk. Rat is night, Vidya is day. So again, this divisions of day and night gives us a sense of time, allows us to calculate time. Oh, you're about 20 minutes late. This ability to gauge time is again given by Durga so we can function within this material world. A sense of time, how we can calculate time. Vishapa and Dhamma, these accompany lobh, greed. These are hunger and thirst. And these make us worried, they make us miserable. By trying to pursue material goals, we just become very, very frustrated because we're spiritual entities. We have no spiritual material pursuits will not make us happy, will not satisfy us. So this whole frustration which occurs, the misery, again, this is a function of Maya. And she comes as Mitra, as Jara, as death and old age. There are so many different possibilities of how Krishna could have designed this material world. What he has decided is that we will live for some time, we will have a certain circumstance, we will die, we will forget our past circumstance, we will have a new circumstance, but our karmic consequences will follow us. He could have had us just live for billions of years, one entity, rooted to a spot, meditating, thinking of all the different things, slowly becoming realized. But Krishna, in his wisdom, he decided that we should have these very short in terms of eternity, very, very short in terms of the age of the universe, the day of Brahma, a manvantar of Manu, very, very short time, 100 years. Most of us don't even live 100 years. So these very, very, so then this is, Maya arranges this old age, this death, without which we would not have samsara as we understand it in our present situation. In the Śrimad Bhāgavatam, 10th canto, 22nd chapter, it describes how the gopis worship Kalyani. Katyayani. And the 9th month, the month immediately after Kartik, is called Margashir Asya, and this is a month in which Kalyani is worshipped. Katyayani. Katyayani, she is worshipped as the remover of obstacles. We understand that Ganesh removes obstacles, so also Katyayani, her function is to remove obstacles. The gopis specifically wanted to marry Krishna. They weren't able to do so, so they were praying to her, please remove all these obstacles so that Krishna can be our husband. In the Skanda Puran, the Leela of Katyayani and Namish Ashura is mentioned. This Ashura, he had the form of a buffalo, but he got a boon from Agni, in which he could not be killed except by a woman. We know the boon that we're familiar with the boon that Hiranyakashipu got. He could not be killed inside the house, outside the house, by any animal, by any man, in daylight, in nighttime, in day. So many different things. He made so many different conditions. And then Lord Nrsingadev was his demise. So similarly, this demon, the Mishashura, he got the boon that he could only be killed by a woman, and so Katyayani, she killed him. Now, at this time, we are undergoing Navaratri. There's 9 days. Navaratri means 9 nights. And there's 9 evenings, specifically, in which Durga is worshipped. And the 6th day, 2 days ago, on the 8th, this was the day in which Katyayani, her killing the demon with her weapons that Durga has, this was celebrated at this time. So Katyayani, she removes obstacles. Prabhupada, he had great respect for Durga, and when he referenced her, he would call her the Devi. There are 108 Deva Pitas, seats, benches. When this Leela we're reading about, and as it will follow in the following verses, the following chapters, when Sati gave up her life, Sita then carried her body. He carried it all over in his travels. He was so attached. He was so lamenting. This was his wife. And he carried it, and bit by bit, pieces of the body would drop off, as it was. Vishnu helped in this with his chakra. And in these different places, there are these different, today, temples for Devapitas. Most of them are in India. Some of them are in East Bengal. 4 are in Nepal. 3 are now in Pakistan. 1 is in Tibet. 1 is in Bhutan. 1 is even in Sri Lanka. And you will be familiar with some of the places in which these temples are. Varanasi, Prayag, Hastinapur, Naimisharanya, Badranath. There are these different temples in which people go to worship the Devi. Srila Prabhupada had great respect for Durga Devi, and he named many of his women disciples with the names of Durga. I have many god sisters who Prabhupada gave the names of Durga, great devotees who have all done wonderful service. I know Parvati, Indyani, Shankari, Svaha, Narayani, Kalyani, Jayanti, Sarvamangala, Gauri, Visheshwari, Bhadra, Kamala, Rudrani, Urvasi, Mahadevi, Nandini. So many different so many different followers of Srila Prabhupada were named after the Devi. So we have to understand the vastness of the scope of the Devatas' influence and their service and their responsibility. So Durga, she controls the three modes of material nature, all of the different arrangements in which the jiva is entangled with this in the material world is the function of Maya. The scientists at present, they feel that there's somewhere between 100 billion and 200 billion galaxies. And they feel that each of them probably have about 200 billion stars with so many planetary systems. So it's a huge undertaking which Maya Devi is responsible for. So this is the character of Sati. This is who she is, this is her potency, this is her capacity, this is her capability. She's not an ordinary person. Very, very exclusive person. So what? Today, in Śrimad Bhāgavatam 4.2.3, Vidura is asking, my dear Maitreya, to part with one's life is very difficult. Would you kindly explain to me how such a son-in-law and father-in-law could quarrel so bitterly that the great goddess Sati could give up her life? Prabhupada translates this as the great goddess Sati, giving her all due respect. This quarrel was Videshas to Yata Pranams. A quarrel so bitter, the great goddess Sati gave up her life. Prana here is translated as life force, and Viveshas is a very strong word. It's not used often in Sanskrit, but when it does, it means variously according to the context: animosity, strong dislike, anger, hostility, malevolence, venom, malice, abomination. Rancor is probably the closest word in English. It's not a common word, not used often, but it means a strong feeling of deep and bitter anger and ill will. Rupa Goswami uses this word. He uses this word, Vidvesha, in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Nectar of Devotion, in the second wave in 1.2.82, when he says, Krishna tat bhakta videsha vinindati. But I'll explain this context. 2 verses previously, there starts in 1.2.80, there starts the 10 principles of bhakti cultivation. To cultivate bhakti nicely, we're first of all advised to give up the company of those who are opposed to the concept of bhakti. Bhakti means to cultivate a divine, loving relationship with the Supreme. It's advised that we give up the company of those who are opposed to this. The second principle is not to be attached to having followers. Whenever one becomes a little accomplished in something, anything at all, anything in the material world, there's a saying here, it's not my first rodeo. People are rodeo riders. Anyone who has accomplished anything, they get followers, people who are in admiration of them. But it's strongly advised that if one wants to walk on a spiritual path, one should not be motivated, one should not be influenced by the fact that one has some standing and some followers are gathering. The third is not be eager for huge undertakings, to do something which is just too enormous a task and which causes anxiety about whether it can complete it. This is not favorable. Number 4 is avoid reading useless books. There are a number of books which the acharyas have given which can aid us in our progress, aid us in our aspirations for cultivating divine love, but simply to read books, to earn a livelihood, or to engage in useless arguments, nowadays on the internet, useless arguments with people. Again, this doesn't help us in our personal undertaking to develop this divine love. Not feeling miserable is number 5. Not being overwhelmed by material circumstances, but to maintain one's focus, one's intention, no matter the material circumstances. This is a quality which must be cultivated. So 6 is not lamentation, not entertaining lamentation, or other extreme emotions, but to be very, very balanced, very, very peaceful, very, very shanti. 7 is not to respect the devatas. Often neophyte devotees, they only have a function, they only focus on Krishna, everything has to be Krishna. They minimize the devatas. We're just describing Sati and Durga and how she's responsible for so much of the material world in which the jiva is housed. So these devatas must be given great respect. This is an intrinsic part of Vaishnavism. Number 8 is not to disturb other living entities. This is a huge, huge subject matter, but one should not be the cause of disturbance for any other people, any other creature, any other insect. Not to disturb other living entities, and is an intrinsic part of a spiritual journey. Number 9 is not to have incur any of the 64 seva apparats, and this is described in Nectar of Devotion, which quotes Śrimad Bhāgavatam 7:5-23, and not any of the 10 nama apparats, which are described in the Padma Puran and the Brahmakand 2:5-15. Number 10 is not to tolerate criticism of Krishna or his devotees by those, and here the word is used, vidvesha, and it's been translated as those who hate Krishna or the devotees. One should not tolerate any criticism from these things. And there's a number of different avenues in which one can pursue if such criticism is mounted. So this is a very strong word, and it's here is Krishna tat bhakta videsha vinindati. So in spiritual life, many things need to be avoided or to be embraced. And this is yama or niyama, which is a very familiar concept in the Vedas, in the Yoga Sutras, the yamas and niyamas. Yama are the things to be avoided, and niyama are the things which are not to be avoided. In other words, the things which are to be practiced and to be embraced. Rupa Goswami, he quotes Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 9:176, Anukula Yena Krishna, Nushil Anam Bhaktir Uttamam, which is the niyama, that we should accept everything favorable for Krishna consciousness. Then he says, Paratiko Yasha Varjanam. Varjanam is completely reject, to leave, to abandon, to renounce, to give up. Varjanam, so reject anything unfavorable. Whether a situation, whether an object is favorable or unfavorable, entirely depends on our intention. The whole of criminal law is based on intention. When you did this, what was your intention? In Old English, from the Latin, it was mens rea. You have to have a situation in your mind. In English, it was called malice aforethought. Nowadays, in the modern vernacular in the United States, it's called premeditated. You went there with a premeditated intention. This was your intention to do that. So the whole of spiritual life is based on intention. So when you have any situation, when you have any circumstance, when we're using things in the material world, what is our intention for doing this? This determines whether it's something which is useful or whether it's unuseful, whether it should be accepted or whether it should be rejected. To determine what is useful or to be avoided requires great training and guidance, and we should refer to the senior devotees. Here we have a very wonderful person, Hamsarupa, who is very, very expert, who is running things nicely. His advice can be taken on anything, whether you think a particular thing is useful or whether in fact it will be detrimental to your spiritual progress. Srila Prabhupada, he was a great genius. He did amazing person who has done amazing things. But for me personally, his greatest achievement was to create this ISKCON society where all of us can benefit from the association, from the example of mature devotees. So we can apply this yama and niyama very, very precisely and very, very expertly. So, where did this happen? It happened, this Satya giving up her life. It happened in her father's house, which was her birthplace. There was a big puja, a big sacrifice for Brihaspati. Brihaspati is the guru of the devatas. If we try to imagine what is a billion, if we count 1, 2, 3, 4 for 16 hours a day, we need some time to sleep, something to eat. But if we count for 16 hours a day, it will take us 48 years to count to a billion. As I said, the scientists are thinking there's 200 billion galaxies, 1 to 200, each with 200 billion stars. It's like a huge number. But Brihaspati, throughout the galaxies, there's all these devatas doing all these different functions. It's been enjoined that we should respect these devatas for the work that they do on behalf of the Supreme Lord. And Brihaspati, he's the guru of all these devatas. So this was a huge sacrifice in which people were coming, devatas were coming from all over the different world, from all over the universe, they were coming. Sati is describing later that she wasn't on this planet with Shiva, and she saw the airplanes coming, and she saw them all coming to planet Earth to do this. And then she wanted to attend this sacrifice. So this all happened in her father's house. There was a big puja for Brihaspati. Brihaspati is the Sanskrit name for Jupiter. So within the Navagraha, within the planets, the influence of Jupiter is very, very beneficial. It gives you a great spiritual benefit. The worship of Brihaspati, the influence of Jupiter in our chart is very, very beneficial. And Brihaspati is also the Sanskrit name for Thursday, the 4th day of the week. Thursday is Brihaspati. It's a very auspicious day for doing pious activities, but it's enjoined that we should not do mundane activities on a Thursday. So Srila Prabhupada, for example, he was very adverse to traveling on a Thursday, specifically between 4:30 and 7:30 in the afternoon. This was his japa time. He didn't want to do mundane. Of course, for Prabhupada it's not mundane, but he He didn't plan things. He didn't travel on Thursday afternoons. When did this happen? This happened long before Vidura was asking Maitreya about the circumstance. Long, long before. There are 14 manvantars. A manvantar is a life of Manu. There are 14 manvantars in one day of Brahma. The first Manu was Swayambhuv Manu. He was the father of Daksha. He was the grandfather of Sati. Now we're in the 7th Manvantar, with the 7th Manu. So 6 whole Manvantars have passed since Vidura was asking Maitreya about Sati giving up her life. In one Manvantar, there are 71 Chatur Yugas. A Chatur Yuga is the 4, Kali, Sattva, Treta, Dwarka, Kali. This is a Chatur Yuga. And we know that Kali Yuga is 432,000. Dwarka Yuga is twice this much at 864,000 years. Treta Yuga is 3 times the length of Kali at 1,296,000. And Satya Yuga is 4 times. So a Chatur Yuga altogether is 4,320,000 years. There are 71 Chatur Yugas in the life of Manu. So 71. And there were 6 Manus. So we are having 1.8 billion and change. So it happened a very, very long time ago. And of course we have the duration of the present Manu, how much of his years. So 1.8 million plus, 1.8 billion plus. I've been given the context of Sati's decision to end her life. So Vidura's question is who? Is why? Why did she do this? Why did she do this? We've discussed who is the great goddess Sati. What was Videsha, was the quarrel? Where was her father's house? When was 1.8 billion years ago? And Vidura is now asking why. Why did she do this? Sati is the eternal consort of Shiva. They are living in the spiritual sky. They have Maheshtam. It's explained very nicely in Brahma Samhita. They're in their own spiritual world. She's the eternal concept. He has many different expansions. She has many different expansions. All of them a reflection coming from her, coming from Lakshmi, coming from Radha. She felt her husband, eternal companion, eternal. There's a deity which is worshipped and a concept which is worshipped in India called Ardha Shiva, in which half of Parvati and half of Shiva are in the same deity. So they're like one body, one soul with 2 different aspects. They're she's very intrinsically involved with him, we can say, in an eternal nature, in an eternal understanding, eternal way. So she could not tolerate the hatred that her father had. Her father, it goes on to describe, he was the chief Prajapati. There are 23 Prajapatis, and the Prajapatis, their function is to populate the universe with people, with devatas, with rakshasas, with fish, with birds, with animals, so many things. They are producing all of the different life forms, all of the different bodies for the different life forms. So he was, at the sacrifice, he was the chief Prajapati. So he came in, he was very proud, and Shiva was just in meditation. Shiva is just continually a very peaceful, very simple person. The word Shiva means very peaceful. He was just and he didn't stand up, and Daksha was very proud, very egotistical. He got angry, he cursed them. And Sati, she could not endure this. So she decided that she didn't want any connection with her father. He was a blasphemer, he was rude, he was angry, he was full of hatred, this word Vishesha. So she decided that having to completely cut herself off from him, but then she had a body which was produced by her parents, which was produced by her father, and she wanted to cut herself off even from the body, to give it up. She said, my body is contaminated by my body relations. So, by yogic power, she lifted her life airs to her navel, then to the 6th chakra between her eyebrows, and by yogic power, she expelled herself, self-ignited herself from her body and left her body. This 6th chakra is called the Ajna chakra, and today in the yoga process, Katyayani, she governs this chakra. So this is the answer to the question, which Vidura asked Maitreya, why did she give up her body? This is a very unusual occurrence. So this is the circumstances. So we've covered all of put the whole different thing in context, who she was, when it happened, where it happened, why it happened. She's very, very, and then there's a whole chapter, several chapters go on to describe this. But we should understand that it's one of the principles that Rupa Goswami said, we should be very, very respectful to the devas. We should not become so enthusiastic in our neophyte aspirations to become Krishna conscious that we minimize the devatas, that we minimize Shiva. Shiva is in the spiritual world. Brahma Samhita describes that he has his own spiritual planet. He's not an ordinary living entity. His expansion, his wife, his companion, his consort Sati, she is not ordinary. They're just very, very, and we should tread very, very carefully when, of course, we avoid the company, generally, of the followers of Shiva and the followers of Parvati, because they tend to be very materialistic people who are seeking material rewards from their worship. Pure devotion is actually very, very rare, that a person only wants a loving exchange with Krishna, and in any circumstances, he's not trying in any way to engineer his circumstances, to have a better situation, to have followers, to be more comfortable, to be materially successful. That a person who has no interest in any level of material success or material facility or material comfort, but exclusively wants to worship Krishna in spite of any circumstance. This is very, very rare. So we can see that on the neophyte level in which we are placed, in the neophyte level of Krishna consciousness, of being a Krishna Bhakta, there's not so much difference between us and people of any other religion. Most people, they pray to God, give me this situation, give me that situation. They require these situations. They want these situations. They want a comfortable circumstance. They want a nice room. They want nice prasad. They want a nice vehicle. They want to fly. They want all of these things. And they argue, well, I'm a religious person. I deserve these things. So there's probably not a lot of difference between the average Hindu who worships Durga and the neophyte devotee who worships Krishna in terms of their aspirations, in terms of their desires, and so on and so on. But the people who worship Durga, generally their aspiration is to go to Swarg, to go to heaven, where they can enjoy very, very nicely within the material world. They only want material enjoyment. Whereas the idea is that if we continue with the path of bhakti, if we advance in the path of bhakti, if we become a very, very rare person who only has pure love of God for Krishna, pure love for Krishna, for God, then this is devoid of any material circumstance. So this is why the devotees of Krishna, they don't mix. They don't associate with people who are worldly and people who are exclusively worshippers of Durga. They tend to be very materialistic people with material aspirations. And hopefully we can find within ourselves some inspiration to have a loving relationship with Krishna based on haitaki, being unmotivated, not motivated by any material thing, and to have it apritiyata, to be uninterrupted. So our goal as aspiring devotees, neophyte devotees who are just starting on this, taking advantage of the wonderful facility that Srila Prabhupada has given us by establishing so many ashrams, so many places where we can take shelter and we can try to do some unmotivated, uninterrupted service. So unmotivated means that our service is purely to further the aims of Srila Prabhupada, which was to introduce this chanting of the Mahamantra to peoples all over the world. So ideally, we are here purely to further Srila Prabhupada's aims without any benefit for myself. Not that I want this, that I want that I want money, that I want a green card, that I want all of these different things that are for our own personal interest. Mostly we are like that because mostly we are neophyte. But the idea is that we should try to associate with purer people, with more advanced devotees who don't want these things, who only want to become Krishna conscious and to give Krishna consciousness to others. Hare Krishna. It's 9 o'clock. Class is finished. Hare Krishna.
Any comments or questions can be made in the prasadam.
Yes, exactly.